Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tearing through a whole stack of sources. Everything from communication science to high-end career coaching.
And we are extracting the absolute critical knowledge you need.
Exactly. We're tackling a skill that I think everyone assumes they have until they walk into a crowded room and just freeze. We're talking about the art of starting and sustaining a real conversation.
It's such a fundamental human skill, but it can feel like a really high-stakes performance, can't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're trying to make genuine connections at a networking event, or maybe you're just trying to shake off some of that, post-pandemic social rust that a lot of us feel.
Right.
Having a reliable strategy is it's crucial.
So we've synthesized all of it. We've pulled the best tools from language learning guides, from psychological research, and our mission today is to build you a clear three-part toolbox.
A toolbox, I like that.
Yeah. The best openers to get things started, the techniques to actually keep that conversation flowing, and then the single most important skill that underpins everything: active listening.
And this deep dive, it's really tailor-made for you if you want powerful, memorable strategies, but without the stress of, wading through dense academic theory.
No textbooks today.
No, none of that. We're giving you the practical stuff that actually sticks in your head when you need it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the beginning. Breaking the ice. I think the single most comforting piece of advice from all of our sources was this reminder that most people are secretly relieved when someone else makes the first move.
Yes.
You're actually doing them a favor just by saying hello.
It's a huge perspective flip. You're not being a bother, you're solving a problem for them. Now, while most people, know the basic English greetings, the nuance is where things can get a little tricky.
Let's get into that, because there's a crucial distinction. You have your normal time-based greetings, right? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Standard stuff.
But there's one rule that gets broken all the time, especially by English learners, and it's around good night.
This is the one we have to flag. Good night is only a farewell. It's a goodbye.
Right, so if you walk into a party at 7 p.m., you start with good evening.
Always. You only say goodnight when you're physically leaving that party or, telling your kids to go to bed. It always means goodbye.
Okay, so you've got the opener out. Then we move past the formal, how are you? Using alternatives is really key here to keep things low stakes.
Absolutely. And please ditch, I'm fine, thank you.
Please.
Just use something like, I'm good or not bad, which, by the way, is a totally normal, fine way of saying things are okay.
And what if someone hits you with the super informal, what's up?
The best kind of non-committal response that keeps the ball rolling is usually just not much. It's simple, it works.
Okay, so let's get tactical. Let's talk openers for specific places, like a conference or a party. The sources seem to point to three really reliable categories. The first one is the shared environment.
This is probably the easiest way in, because you're leveraging your immediate surroundings. You already have a shared context.
So you're talking about the food or the room?
Exactly. It could be a comment on the food like, I'm going back for a third of these appetizers, have you tried them? Or you could even talk about the logistics of getting there.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, something like, the traffic getting here was brutal. Was it a pain for you to find parking too?
That's good, because it's like a tiny shared hardship. It builds an instant little bridge between you. Okay, another category is the compliment.
A well-placed compliment is so powerful, but it comes with one major rule. Compliment choices, not physical features.
Ah, okay. So never comment on someone's height or their eye color.
Never. Instead of a broad physical thing, you focus on their decisions. I really like your shirt, that color is great. Or, that's a cool bag, where did you find it?
I see. Because when someone wears like a bold pair of socks or a unique piece of jewelry, they're kind of broadcasting a little piece of their personality.
That's it, exactly. And complimenting that choice just signals that you noticed and you approve of their self-expression. It's a great positive starter.
Okay, the third one is what the sources call the newsworthy event-specific opener. This is really useful in professional settings.
Right, and instead of the lame, so what'd you think of the keynote? Which just gets you a yes or no.
Right, it was fine, end of conversation.
You use a slightly more reflective prompt. Something like, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed by the sheer deluge of information today. Is there one specific nugget of brilliance that's really resonating with you?
Ooh, that's good. It forces them to actually think, to summarize, and share something a little more personal and relevant to why you're both there.
It moves you past the superficial stuff right away.
And finally, a great little tip for the more socially anxious or introverted listeners out there.
The introvert's trick.
Yes. Look for someone on the edge of the room. Chances are they are feeling the exact same way you are.
So you approach them and you just acknowledge the shared situation. You say something like, man, these networking events can feel so crazy. Mind if I join you over here where it's a little quieter?
It's perfect. It establishes an instant, super low-pressure common ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've broken the ice. Now what? I mean, how do you keep it going? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. And many people rely on this one popular framework, the F4D method.
Ah, yes, the infamous 4D. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. On the surface, it seems like this perfect, structured four-step guide.
So F for family partners, kids, pets. O for occupation, their job, their education. R is recreation, hobbies, fun stuff. And D is dreams, goals, aspirations.
That's the roadmap, but this is where our sources really pump the brakes and inject a huge note of caution.
How so?
If you dive straight into F or O, family or occupation, too quickly, you risk hitting a serious conversational landmine.
But that seems so counterintuitive. Isn't the whole point of A4D to get personal? I mean, if we just talk about the venue or the weather forever, when do we get to a real connection?
That is the tension, you're right. But you have to earn the right to ask those bigger questions. Think about the landmines. Asking about family could be deeply painful if they're dealing with a recent divorce, or a loss, or a health issue.
Oof, yeah.
And asking about occupation can be so sensitive if they just lost their job, or if they absolutely hate their career, and you're forcing them to define themselves by it. The context here is everything.
So the goal isn't to just rigidly follow the acronym like a checklist.
Not at all.
It's more like a set of options, and you have to recognize which ones are low risk and which are high risk, depending on the trust you've built.
Precisely. If you're going to use the acronym early on, R for recreation is your safest bet. What do you do for fun? It is almost universally a welcome question.
Because people like talking about their passion.
They love it. It's safe ground 99% of the time.
And speaking of safe ground, we have to talk about what to absolutely avoid, which the sources distilled into this great counter-acronym, GRAPES.
Yes, a fantastic guiding principle for any kind of casual small talk. You want to avoid guns, religion, abortion, politics, economics, and sexuality.
Yeah, these are just emotionally charged, highly divisive, and probably not going to lead to a comfortable connection with someone you just met.
Probably not.
So instead of, a deep dive into politics, the sources give this brilliant, all-purpose, open-ended question that actually covers a few of the F4D elements without being intrusive.
And that question is, what are you working on these days?
I love that phrasing. It's so flexible, it lets the other person define the scope of the answer.
Exactly. They can talk about their job or a side hustle, a volunteer project.
Or, as one source hilariously pointed out, they can tell you all about how they're finally building that chicken coop in the backyard.
It gives them total conversational control, it's respectful, and it naturally encourages storytelling, which is really the key to keeping any conversation going.
Which brings us to the foundational skill. Because whether you're breaking the ice or trying to sustain a flow, none of it works if you haven't mastered active listening. We hear the term constantly, but what does it actually mean functionally?
At its core, active listening is the intentional practice of listening to understand what the other person is trying to communicate, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
It's moving from a monologue contest to a shared experience.
Exactly. And one of those fascinating scientific insights from our material explains why our minds drift off so easily.
Okay, I want to hear this.
So the average person speaks at about 125 words per minute, but our brains can process language at up to 500 words per minute.
Wow, okay. That's a huge gap.
It's an enormous gap. And that surplus, that 375 words per minute of extra processing power, that's why we get bored. That's why our mind starts wandering to our grocery list or checking our phone.
So the key is to manage that surplus capacity, to use it intentionally.
Yes. Instead of letting your mind wander, you use that extra capacity to actively engage. You can mentally summarize their last few points, you can try to identify what their core emotion is, or you can look for keywords you need to follow up on.
And that leads right into the practical techniques, right? The actual how-to of active listening.
It does. First is comprehend. That's about achieving a shared meaning. You pay attention to words they emphasize or repeat. Then you have retain. If something sounds important, you make a mental note of it. Just repeating it in your head helps a lot.
And then the part everyone can see is responding.
Right, the output. Yeah. And there are 3 simple steps here. First, paraphrase, put what they just said into your own words.
So what I'm hearing is,
Exactly. Second, clarify, ask questions to fill in any gaps. When you said X, what did you mean by that? And third, summarize, just offer a quick, concise overview of their main points to show you were tracking.
it sounds like this cycle would instantly build trust.
It does. It promotes trust, and it massively reduces conflict. It's why active listening is so critical in high-stakes fields like healthcare. Research shows it leads to better diagnoses, better patient adherence to treatment.
Because people feel heard.
When people feel heard, they participate more effectively. It's that simple.
But we also have to talk about the barriers, the listening blocks. These are the bad habits we all fall into.
Oh, yeah?
We mentioned rehearsing your response while someone is still talking, or filtering, where you only hear what you expect to hear and you ignore anything that contradicts it.
And a huge psychological block is called ambushing. This is when you're not listening to understand. You're listening only for weaknesses or flaws in their argument so you can launch a counterattack.
Which immediately makes it competitive, not cooperative.
Instantly.
But even if you have perfect active listening skills, you could still fail if you ignore the context, right? Because all these rules we just laid out, they can change radically, depending on the culture.
Radically. Ignoring those patterns is a fast track to a major misunderstanding. The contrast in styles can be dramatic. Just look at the US versus the UK.
Okay, what do the sources say?
Well, they generally describe Americans as more open, enthusiastic, often focusing on personal achievements, and they have high willingness to just start a conversation with a complete stranger.
Whereas the British are, stereotypically but often accurately, more reserved and understated.
Much more. They tend to favor neutral topics like current events or hobbies, and they use a lot of dry, often self-deprecating humor. And initiating small talk with a stranger in the UK, say on a train, might be seen as a bit intrusive.
Then you have topic taboos that are different everywhere.
Absolutely. Discussing salary or personal wealth is generally a no-go in the UK or the US. But our sources suggest that in the Balkans, it can be a pretty ordinary, friendly topic in some contexts. And conversely, asking personal questions about family or weekend plans is considered polite conversational upkeep in places like Iraq and Yemen, where in some Western settings it might feel a little too personal right off the bat.
And what about silence? That's a big one.
A huge one. For many Western cultures, like in the UK, conversational fluency is the goal. You want to avoid awkward silences.
Right, silence means failure.
But the sources note that in places like Japan and Turkey, silence is highly valued. It's a communication tool. It's a sign of respect, of contemplation, of giving careful thought to what's been said. It's not a sign the conversation has died.
It's such a powerful reminder that our entire strategy has to be locally influenced and context aware.
Always.
This has been a really complete 3-part conversational framework. We covered how to start simple, with a compliment on a choice or a comment on the shared environment.
Then we learned how to sustain that connection using the F40 categories, but always with caution.
Right, applying them carefully and avoiding those conversational landmines in grapes.
And most critically, we understood that the entire system just falls apart without active listening. That intentional practice of using your spare brain capacity to comprehend, retain, and respond.
It's the one skill to rule them all. It's what actually fosters trust.
It really is.
And we even saw that this practice can work in some unexpected places. The sources pointed out that digital environments, like a focused Zoom interview, can sometimes encourage deeper engagement.
Which sounds so backwards, but it makes sense. It's because they eliminate all the physical distractions and force you to focus intently on the verbal and nonverbal cues you could see.
It's clear that true connection really comes from that level of focused listening, which, as you said, has its roots in counseling, creating a safe, empathic, non-threatening space.
A space to overcome defensiveness and actually promote relational growth.
Which leaves us with a really interesting final thought for you to chew on. If that deep connection hinges on active listening and creating that safe, vulnerable space, but good small talk requires us to stay polite and surface level, to avoid all those heavy topics and grapes, how do you decide when to shift gears?
That's the question.
When is the right moment to pivot from that safe, casual interaction to the vulnerable, trust-building, deep listening that's required for a truly meaningful and lasting relationship?